Today's discussion is centered around dopamine, the driving force behind our actions, motivations, desires, and cravings. We're delving deep into the role of dopamine in our feelings of satisfaction and well-being, and its link to addiction. Dopamine is at the core of our responses to various stimuli, influencing our habits and choices. We aim to break down misconceptions about dopamine, often referred to as providing hits of pleasure. We'll explore the actual workings of dopamine, covering both its biology and psychology, and delve into the neural circuits involved. A fascinating aspect of dopamine biology is the concept of dopamine schedules. How various elements like food, drugs, caffeine, and even certain plant-based compounds impact our baseline dopamine levels and, consequently, our reactions to different experiences. You'll gain practical insights into how to utilize dopamine effectively to sustain energy, drive, and motivation for your important goals over extended periods. Understanding dopamine involves differentiating between tonic, baseline, and phasic, peak, releases and how they interact. This knowledge is crucial in avoiding addiction and maintaining a sustainable level of motivation and happiness. We'll also touch on the distinctions between neurotransmitters and neuromodulators, with a focus on how dopamine modulates various neural circuits, affecting everything from movement to mood and motivation. The neural circuits of dopamine are fascinating, involving pathways like the mesocorticolimbic and the nigrostriatal, each playing distinct roles in our brain's functioning. We'll simplify these terms, making the biology accessible and relevant to everyone. Our discussion will debunk common myths about dopamine, often misconceived as providing mere hits of pleasure. Instead, we'll examine the actual workings of dopamine, encompassing both its biological and psychological aspects. We'll look into neural circuits and the intriguing concept of dopamine schedules, discussing how certain activities and substances, like food, drugs, caffeine, or pornography, can modify our baseline dopamine levels. A key aspect we'll explore is the baseline versus peaks concept of dopamine, understanding both the spatial and duration aspects of dopamine release. Dopamine's unique communication through G-protein-coupled receptors makes its effects slower and more varied compared to other brain chemicals. This understanding of dopamine's actions is vital, as it underscores the different pathways and scales at which dopamine operates, from influencing movement to affecting motivation and craving. Whether you're interested in the science behind dopamine, are looking for ways to optimize your motivation and well-being, this discussion is sure to provide valuable insights. Now, how different activities and substances trigger varying levels of dopamine response. One intriguing aspect we discuss is caffeine, a common favorite. While caffeine's impact on dopamine is modest compared to substances like chocolate, nicotine, or amphetamines, it does have a unique role in enhancing dopamine receptor sensitivity. This is due to its ability to upregulate certain dopamine receptors, thus amplifying dopamine's effects in the brain. Understanding dopamine's role is crucial in recognizing how it synergizes with other substances, like alcohol and nicotine, or with behaviors like exercise, regular engagement in activities, or consumption of substances that spike dopamine levels can lead to motivation and energy issues, especially if done excessively. It's essential to balance these activities to maintain a healthy dopamine baseline, without compromising our capacity to experience joy and motivation. The key to optimizing dopamine lies in understanding its dual nature, the peaks and baseline levels. These two aspects are interconnected. High peaks can lead to a significant drop in baseline levels, influencing our overall mood and motivation. This phenomenon explains the post-event blues often experienced after significant achievements or indulgences. Continual engagement in high dopamine activities can lead to an unsustainable cycle, where each subsequent activity becomes less rewarding, and our baseline dopamine levels diminish. To effectively manage dopamine levels, intermittent release and engagement in dopamine-evoking activities are recommended. This approach ensures that while we still enjoy the peaks, our baseline dopamine level remains stable. Activities and substances that increase dopamine should be enjoyed intermittently to avoid the pitfalls of constant high stimulation, which can lead to a depletion of dopamine reserves. A practical tool for managing dopamine release is to introduce an element of randomness in engaging with dopamine-enhancing activities. For instance, decide whether to listen to music during a workout based on a coin toss. This randomness helps maintain a healthy and sustainable level of dopamine release and reception. In summary, dopamine plays a crucial role in our motivation, pleasure, and overall well-being. By understanding its mechanics and learning to manage its levels effectively, we can sustain a healthy balance of motivation and joy in our daily lives. This approach is crucial for long-term happiness and avoiding the potential downfalls of constant high dopamine stimulation. While it may seem counterintuitive, limiting dopamine-boosting elements in certain activities actually fosters both immediate and long-term progress. Consider the smartphone, a prime example of a modern tool that enhances dopamine release. The constant interaction with digital technology, be it through social media, music, podcasts, or texting, can lead to decreased baseline levels of dopamine, inadvertently affecting our overall mood and motivation. It's crucial to understand that rewards can have a complex effect on our behavior and dopamine levels. For instance, a study involving children who were rewarded for drawing, an activity they initially did intrinsically, showed a decreased interest in drawing once the rewards ceased. This underscores the importance of differentiating between intrinsic and extrinsic reinforcement. Dopamine not only governs our perception of pleasure, but also significantly influences our perception of time. When we work towards a delayed reward, our experience of the effort involved is altered, often making it feel more strenuous and less enjoyable. To foster a healthy relationship with dopamine, it's beneficial to cultivate a growth mindset. This involves finding joy in the effort and process itself, rather than solely focusing on the end goal or reward. By consciously associating effort with internal rewards and enjoyment, we can enhance our dopamine response to hard work, making it more satisfying and sustainable. In practical terms, this means acknowledging and embracing the discomfort, our challenge in an activity, and telling yourself that this effort is rewarding in itself. This approach is vastly different from focusing on external rewards, and has the potential to transform our experiences with various activities, making them more fulfilling and enjoyable. In summary, understanding and managing our dopamine response is key to sustaining motivation and pleasure in our activities. By reducing our reliance on external rewards, and focusing on the intrinsic value of effort and process, we can maintain a healthy dopamine baseline, and continue to find joy and satisfaction in our pursuits. To effectively harness the power of dopamine, it's essential to understand and manage its release during effort and reward. Avoid artificially spiking dopamine before or after engaging in effortful activities. Instead, learn to derive dopamine release from the effort itself. A prime example of attaching dopamine to effort rather than reward is intermittent fasting. This practice, popular for various health benefits, also offers insights into dopamine regulation. Initially, people may engage in fasting for physical benefits. But over time, they often begin to enjoy the fasting state itself. This shift occurs as dopamine release becomes associated more with the act of fasting, the effort, rather than the act of eating, the reward. Fasting thereby becomes a process where deprivation itself triggers dopamine release, rather than the subsequent eating. This approach can be applied to other areas of life as well. For instance, instead of relying on external rewards or stimulants for motivation, finding pleasure in the process and challenge of an activity can create a sustainable and self-reinforcing cycle of dopamine release. This mindset aligns with the concept of growth mindset, where the journey and effort are valued as much as, if not more than, the end goal. Regarding supplements that influence dopamine, two common ones are mecunapirians, a natural source of L-dopa, and L-tyrosine, a precursor to dopamine. While these can increase dopamine levels, they may also lead to a subsequent decrease, affecting your baseline dopamine levels. Supplements like P and huperzine A are gaining popularity for their more regulated effects on dopamine. However, they should be used cautiously, and not as a regular means to spike dopamine. It's important to note that certain behaviors and substances can lower dopamine levels. For example, taking melatonin or exposure to bright lights at night can reduce dopamine, affecting mood and motivation. Lastly, the power of social connections in influencing dopamine pathways shouldn't be underestimated. Oxytocin, released during social bonding, can stimulate dopamine release, highlighting the importance of nurturing healthy social relationships for overall well-being. In summary, understanding and managing dopamine through a balance of effort, reward, and healthy lifestyle choices can lead to sustained motivation, pleasure, and well-being. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to share, like and subscribe.